So how do you make something truly scary? I mean, beyond just monsters and jump scares. What if the horror wasn't a thing, but the very shape of reality itself? It sounds wild, right? Well, let's get into it. Because H.P. Lovecraft had this really unique and frankly bizarre answer. He figured out how to weaponize math.
So in his classic, The Call of Cthulhu, Lovecraft hits us with this line to describe the alien city of Arlia. And you gotta understand, he's not just saying, ooh, it's spooky and old. No, he's saying its very bones, its physical structure, its geometry, it all comes from a place that is totally alien to us. The horror is literally baked into the bricks and stones.
And this, right here, is where he creates this whole new type of horror. He takes something totally abstract, like geometry class, and turns it into this source of real, gut-wrenching dread. It's not really about what you're looking at, it's about the terrifying feeling that you can't even begin to understand it.
Okay, and don't worry, you don't need to be a math genius to follow this. For Lovecraft, the term non-Euclidean geometry was basically a cool-sounding, kind of scientific buzzword. It was his shortcut, his way of saying, hey, this universe runs on a completely different operating system, one so alien that even looking at it will crash your brain.
And where does all this horror take shape? In the sunken, absolutely impossible city of R'lyeh. Yeah, that's Cthulhu's home turf. But here's the thing. R'lyeh isn't just some spooky set dressing. Oh no, it's an active player in the story. It's the physical proof of a universe that, frankly, couldn't care less about you and me.
So what Lovecraft is doing here, we can basically call it Lovecraftian pseudo-geometry. And again, this isn't some equation you need to solve. It's a tool, a literary weapon. Its whole purpose is to make you, the reader, feel tiny, powerless, and like you've wandered into a place you absolutely do not belong. It's literally the language of cosmic horror.
I mean, just think about the difference. Our world, our normal Euclidean world, it's predictable. Gravity works. Floors are floors. It makes sense. You can walk around in it. R'lyeh, though, it's the complete opposite. It's actively hostile. The characters in the story literally can't tell if a surface curves in or out. Can you imagine trying to walk through a room where the floor could suddenly become the ceiling? It's just chaos.
And here's the real kicker. When your brain is forced to see something that completely breaks its most basic rules about space and reality, it just short-circuits. It can't handle it. So that feeling of physical dizziness, that vertigo, that's the perfect outward sign of what's happening on the inside. A total mental breakdown. Madness.
Okay, I know this all sounds kind of heady and abstract, but Lovecraft doesn't just leave it there. He gives us this incredibly brutal, concrete example of this geometric horror. And honestly, it's one of the most chilling parts of the entire story.
So to really get what happens next, you have to stop thinking of Arlia as just a city. Think of it as a character, the villain. Its very design, its architecture, is built to work against you. It's not just that it doesn't make sense to us, it's that it actively, physically rejects us. And that brings us to a really scary question. How can something so basic, so fundamental, like a simple angle in a wall, how can that become a deadly weapon?
Well, here's the horrifying answer. There's this sailor, his name is Parker, and he slips and falls. But he doesn't just hit the pavement. No. The book says he's swallowed up by an impossible angle of masonry. Just let that sink in. He wasn't attacked by some monster. The city's physics killed him.
I mean, try to wrap your head around that. A corner that looks sharp, an acute angle, something you could maybe hide in. It acts like it's wide open, like an obtuse angle, a gaping mouth. This is what the story calls structural wrongness. The basic rules of how space works are just gone. It makes simple survival, even just walking, completely impossible.
So this is way bigger than just one poor sailor or one creepy city, right? What this impossible geometry really does is raise some terrifying questions about our place in the entire cosmos.
A pretty good way to picture this is to think of one of those M.C. Escher drawings, the staircases that go nowhere and the weird perspectives. The big difference is, in Lovecraft's story, it's not just a clever trick on a piece of paper. It's real. And its whole point is to make you feel completely alienated, like a trespasser in a place you were never, ever supposed to see.
And what's really cool is that Lovecraft was totally plugging into the scientific fears of his day. Think about it. This is the early 20th century. You've got Einstein's relativity, you've got X-rays. Science was suddenly revealing this whole invisible reality that was always there,
right beyond what we could see. Lovecraft just took that anxiety and ran with it, basically saying, yeah, all that logic and reason we're so proud of, it's just a paper-thin shield against a universe that's built on completely alien math.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, this twisted geometry reveals some pretty terrifying truths. For one, it shows that our science, our philosophy, it's all just local rules, not the law of the land for the whole universe. It implies that these old ones, they operate on an older, more fundamental version of physics. And that makes our entire world feel like just a temporary little bubble. Rylea is basically a giant tombstone that says, "Here lies human certainty."
And that's why the real horror of Rylea isn't the slime or the fact that it's massive. It's what Lovecraft calls its geometric impiousness. What a phrase, right? It's the idea that this place is a crime against nature itself. It's blasphemy, but instead of words, it's written in stone and impossible angles.
Okay, let's wrap this all up. Let's get to the heart of it. What is the true shape of fear in Lovecraft's universe?
It really comes down to this, that non-Euclidean geometry, it's the ultimate dividing line. It's the fence between our little, cozy, understandable world and everything else, the vast, terrifying, unknowable cosmos. And that's what takes us from just being a cool monster story and turns it into a full-blown philosophical nightmare.
So here's the true horror, laid out step by step. 1. You can't separate the creature from the place. The terror of Cthulhu is the terror of Raleigh. They're the same thing. 2. The city itself is basically a portal to dimensions we can't even comprehend. And 3, and this is the one that'll keep you up at night, these unnatural geometries, they're not unnatural at all. They are the real rules of the cosmos. We're the weird ones. We are the exception.
And what that means is that the Call of Cthulhu, it's not just some spooky psychic message or a weird chant. No, it's the background radiation of the universe, humming in its native tongue. It's a mathematical certainty that eventually humanity is going to stumble upon this horrifying truth about how reality is actually built.
And that leaves us with one last, really unsettling thought to chew on. What if all the natural laws we trust, all the science that makes us feel safe and in control, what if it's not the rule? What if it's just a little local bylaw for our corner of the universe? An exception to a much older, much stranger, and far more terrifying cosmic rule?